Good evening. I don't normally stream with my headphones off. It feels I feel like naked almost. Like something's wrong. I figured, so I'm not gonna be showing clips this time because that's what got the stream like canceled or whatever. So we will just be looking at pictures or screen or stills, I guess. So that will it means I don't have to listen to anything. I can just hear myself talk normally, which is weird. Um, so if I'm too quiet, let me know. I can fix that, but I'm not really listening to myself. Um, it feels like it's been a while. I mean, it's just been a week, but uh, I've since last week I've watched three of the Best Picture nominees for this year, which is honestly pretty good for me. I saw I'm Still Here last Tuesday at the theater. It was really great. I am not at all surprised that what's her name? The main actress, Fernanda. Hold on, let me Google it. Yeah, Fernanda Torres. And her mom playing the same character. Her mom's in it a lot less than she is, but I thought that was really fun. I just thought they did like a great job with the makeup. I was like, dang. Jesus looks like an old lady. And then on Saturday I watched Emilia Perez. It was so bad. And like I should have known. I knew it was going to be bad. I knew it was going to be bad, but like y'all warned me and I just didn't heed that warning cuz I was like it can't be that bad. Like what, it was so bad cuz like if you remove it from the context of all the drama and stuff that's been going on and the racism, which you shouldn't, but if you were to take that away, it's still not a good movie. Like outside of that context, I know it was so bad. And people warned me, they told me it was bad. Like I've been seeing online that it's terrible, but I was like, I want to see it because I want to see what Academy voters see in this movie. What could they possibly see in this movie? And I still don't know. I've seen it and I still don't know. It kind of does like a surface level like conversation of like these kinds of things happen, but it has no commentary at all cuz there's like domestic violence. There's cartel violence. There's like people disappearing in Mexico. There's, transitioning. There's all this stuff and it just covers it like what's it called? Just like the tip of the iceberg. Not even the tip, it just like a bit of the frosting on a cake or something. It doesn't really go into it at all. And I just was like and because of that the movie feels really disorienting. Superficial. Yeah, it's superficial. It doesn't go into anything. It just talks about it for a second and just says this is a thing that happens. And then there's like no commentary about what that means or how it affects people. It's just like, look, here it is. Someone transitioned. I don't know. Because you're like, Amelia as a character, you don't really get to know her until after she's transitioned. And I get that, like, transitioning can be really life changing and you become more yourself, obviously. But I just was like, it would have been interesting to see her from the beginning as more of like a person because in the beginning she's this drug cartel leader and like doesn't really isn't personable yet until she transitions anyway. And then on Sunday, yesterday was Sunday, I watched Denora, which was great. That was so funny. Oh my goodness. I knew it was a comedy, but the first like 30 minutes I was like parts of this are funny, but it's not really like super funny. But then the second it gets into the um like the home invasion part of it starts, I was like, oh, I get this now. This is hilarious. Like the part where I don't even remember his name. There's a guy that gets punched in the face and he's like looking for ice in the house and he grabs a bunch of frozen pasta to put on his face. And like I just have this image in my head of him like sitting on the couch like this with the pastas because he can't find any ice. Anyway, it's very funny. Trying to describe it makes it not sound that funny, but it is very funny. So I've been busy watching movies. Not playing really any games, which is not surprising, honestly. I've been editing a couple things that I'm hoping I'll have something out this week and then something else next week that may be Oscars related. I was thinking the week after, so next week we'll talk about, what's it called? Anyway, it's on the schedule. But the week after is the Oscars, and I kind of want to do like a chat about the Oscars thing just because I am so. Insomnia. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. I am so not prepared for what the Oscars, like who's going to win at the Oscars because it has been so all over the place this year. Like Best Picture has gone to The Brutalist and Anora, and yesterday Conclave won the Best Picture BAFTA, and then Emilia Perez won at the Golden Globes for musical/comedy. I don't think it's gonna win at this point because the Oscar voting ends, I think, tomorrow. It started on Thursday, sometime last week. It's been like a week, I think. So I would be kind of surprised after all that's happened if it were to win. But you never know. People love it. It won Best International Feature at, or what do they call it now? Best Non-English Language Film yesterday. At the BAFTAs. But I don't know when that voting for that happened, so we'll see. The SAG Awards are this weekend. And that will also be telling a little bit too. We'll see. So it's an exciting time. Exciting time for movies, and I haven't seen anything new in 2025. I'm still catching up on stuff from last year. Anyway, that's not why we're here. We're here to talk about Anatomy of a Fall. I'm over here now. Where is it? Just as a warning, we are going to talk about spoilers, and this is a movie that's really hard to talk about and not say any spoilers because yeah, it just is kind of hard not to. So if you don't want to be spoiled, here's your warning. I really love this movie. I mean, that's part of why I picked it. Next week will be the first movie I actually haven't seen before, so that'll be fun. Last year, so it came out in 2023. It won at the Oscars Best Original Screenplay, which I think was its only Oscar win, but that's not surprising because Oppenheimer kind of was. Yeah, spoiler. It just like, it's like the newscast where it's like down here, spoiler warning. It comes up every few minutes. In case you haven't been spoiled already, here we go. That would be really funny, actually. Yeah. Yeah, so it won that, and it didn't win anything else, I think partially because of Oppenheimer's chokehold on the Oscars last year, which was well deserved in my opinion. I'm not saying that they did not deserve that, but That's definitely part of it. I actually don't know what else it would have won. Best director would have been fun, but it was Christopher Nolan's time. He's been nominated a few times, I would imagine. Did you get? Oh, speaking of Christopher Nolan, sorry to sidetrack again. Did you guys see the picture of Matt Damon on the set of The Odyssey? Here, let me pull it up because I can. The Odyssey. How do I find it in the Odyssey? Christopher Nolan. So they've officially announced that Matt Damon is Odysseus, which I'm like not surprised by. People thought it was gonna be Tom Holland, which is crazy. Um, but it is definitely Matt Damon. Wait, okay. I just want the picture. All right, let's see how this looks. Oh, that's not too bad. I couldn't find one with just him, but here he is, Matt Damon with the hat. Some people thought he was not going to make it a period piece. That would be crazy, right? Like, I don't know why people thought that, but I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be fun. It comes out around my birthday again. I love that he's doing July releases. Oppenheimer came out, and Barbie, which was a blast, came out the day before my birthday last year. No, 2 years ago. When was that? um, yeah, Gladiator 2. That's wasn't it going to actually legit be a time travel movie? Like, is that, or am I thinking of something else? Where he like goes through different times and is like a warrior in different time periods? Like legit the original Gladiator 2, not the one that we've seen. Um that would be crazy. Um Back to Anatomy of Fall. Hold on, let me pull up my pictures. Oh, here they are. I have not tested this, which is dumb. Let's see how this goes. Okay. Come on, pictures. Maximus would travel and be in every big conflict in history. Wow. That would be something. That would, yeah. Who wrote that? Because that just seems crazy. Was that Ridley Scott? I don't think Ridley Scott really writes his own screenplays, and that's why so many of them are like really good, and then some just aren't good at all. I imagine that's where that comes from. Um, I want back to the topic at hand. Oh, let's get rid of that. I'm really good at staying focused. Can't you tell? um, I wanted to start off not talking plot yet, but I just think that so much of this movie works because of the great performances in it. Yeah, the French justice system. We'll get there. And I think Sandra Huller, this actress who was our main, the subject of the film, right? I wouldn't have been mad at all if she won Best Actress last year. Emma Stone, I also think had a great performance too, but Sandra's incredible in this movie, and I feel like much of this movie weighs on her performance. If you asking like, okay, is she guilty? Is she not? Because I feel like at any given moment, it really could go either way, which is super interesting and super fun. And her performance is like really subtle too. I was thinking about this with I'm Still Here. In that film, the actress, she spends a lot of time like keeping a lot of things in and like not letting people know how she's feeling because she's trying to protect her kids, right? And in this film, I feel similar. It has a different flavor to it because she's also trying to defend herself, and she has to be a lot more She's a lot better at communicating her feelings, at least within what we see. But I think it's interesting seeing her at the beginning of the film when she's talking to that young woman and doing the interview, and then they play the what is the song called? I can't remember. Um, where she's just like talking to her, and she just seems so loose and like smiley and happy, and then of course after the her husband dies, like of course she's gonna be a little bit more serious, but um it's interesting seeing her that way. I think I have a picture of her from the beginning of the film too. Like you can just see, like, look at this. She's just so much happier. This is from the first like 5 minutes, and she's just so happy. You really don't see her smile other than this like one scene, which is crazy. And of course, it makes sense in context. She's, you know, been being tried for murder of her husband, which would be really hard, whether you did it or not, I think. um, and then I also wanted to talk about her co-star. What's his name? Swan Arlott. All right, let's see how this looks with the thing. Oh, he looks good. I think his performance is interesting. It feels very like we don't see him go through a huge range of emotions as we do with Sandra. But I do think that his hair is amazing. That's important. I know that's not a huge thing, but I don't know if you guys remember the Oscar season last year. Everybody was obsessing over his hair. If I could get my hair to look like that when it was that long, it would be that. It would be shorter than it is now. But yeah, he does a great job. Being her lawyer and confidant. Really, he's like the one that she talks to because she's not. Yeah, I know. Same. I want that hair. I want that hair. I wouldn't even mind the gray. Like it's a nice gray and uh darker gray. So I think that yeah, he does a great job too. And then I also want to talk about the boy who was also incredible. I have a picture of him too. And what I think is one of the best scenes of the whole thing. Um, but we'll get to that. His name is Milo. I'm probably not saying these right because all these people are from. She's German, Sandra, which makes sense because her character is German, and then everybody else, I'm pretty sure, is French. Milo Machado Granier, but he is so incredible in this, and he has even more, like I think an even bigger range of emotions because he has to cry like 3 or 4 times in the movie. What, or maybe he doesn't have to, but he did, and it just feels really kid actors. It's really hit or miss. You have the once in a lifetime performances like Sixth Sense, and then this is also really incredible too. And then you also have like really good movies with bad kid performances. I can't think of anything right this moment, but I'm sure it exists. But a huge part of why this movie works too is because he is so great, and he's like our point of view character. So it's really important that he is like his performance is done well, and like he's not in it as much as like his mom or even the lawyer, but because of like we're really seeing this all through his eyes, his blind eyes. But it isn't that doesn't that seem right that this is his point of view, like from the beginning, like he's hearing his mom talk to the student and then he leaves, and then we have no information, like we don't see what happens after that. It's all about like, and then we follow him walking around with Snoop the dog, and then he comes back, and then the dog and then the dog comes upon the body, and we experience him finding his dad, and then I really think the court case is all seen through his eyes. I feel so bad saying that. He's blind. That's through his perspective. We see it through his perspective. To the point where, like, at the end of the film, yeah, that's a better way of saying it. Seeing it through his perspective. To the point where at the end we like see how he comes to the conclusion that he does, and why he says what he says at the end. Which I'll get to. I'm just trying to remain focused, which I'm not great at. And then last but certainly not least, I want to talk about Messy the dog. Messy, which is the dog's name in real life. The character's name is Snoop. Snoop the dog. Who's also on my thumbnail. I love Snoop. I mean, it's hard not to love a dog. Oh, he's so small. Let's make him bigger. Maybe. Nope, that's just moving it. I really love Snoop. There we go. Oh, I love this dog. It was funny, we were watching this at my in-laws, and they have a dog that kind of looks like this dog. It has the, like, piercing blue eyes. And he was sitting there at the beginning with us, and the beginning starts off where the boy, why can't I think of his character's name? He's, like, feeding, yeah, same breed. They just, have different coloring in different spots, but, like, very, very similar size. And, the big, bright blue eyes. Daniel's the boy's name. So Daniel's, like, feeding Snoop, I think. And he's, like, making dog noises. And he kept being like, what's going on? I think this might be the best performance of any dog in any film I've ever seen. And it's hard to call it, like, a performance because, it's, like, training. But acting is training, too. So I can call it a performance if I want. I think it's just incredible what the trainer was able to accomplish with Messy, which is the dog's real name. And it's all one dog. I remember when I watched it for the first time, I was like, is this more than one dog? Like, because often in a film, they'll have different dogs that look similar to each other, and they'll train them to do different things, or different cats or whatever. And there's, like, the cat that does this specific trick, and then, the other cat that's really good at walking and hitting the marks, and then there's one that's really good at jumping. But this was all the same dog, all Messy, all him. And, like, a lot of it is just him being a dog, which is, but there's that scene near the end where this dog has to basically have a severe reaction to some drugs he has. And I just, like, when I watched it for the first time, I was so worried the dog was gonna die. If you haven't seen it, the dog makes it out fine if you're worried about that. I always like to tell people, because I'm a dog person myself, it's important to me to know that the dog makes it out okay. Like, when I went to watch Prey on Hulu, I was like, before I commit to watching this movie that has a dog companion in it, I must know, does the dog make it out okay? It's very important to me. And the dog did make it out fine, so I was like, okay, I'll watch it. I didn't do that with this one. I didn't even consider that the dog might get hurt. But the dog is fine. Excuse me. So that's the cast, basically. I mean, there's other people, too. There's, like, another lawyer lady who has some funny one-liners, but she's not a huge presence in it. And then there's the prosecutor who um, is really just a jerk. It was fun watching that with my friends, and I'll talk more about the court case later. But it was just fun to see that with them because the French court is wild. I want to talk about some of my favorite scenes of the film. The very beginning, I think, is super interesting. I talked a little bit about it earlier, and I think it's interesting that we start off right with the day he dies. Like there's no like precursor of like this is what their life was like before everything happened. What's going on? It just starts off that same day, and we see a little bit of what their life is like. It seems like um Daniel is relatively independent, and he goes outside on his own with Snoop to go for a walk, and we see her interviewing this other lady, and she seems very relaxed. And then we see this tension between her and her husband, and he doesn't even show up on screen. He makes his presence known by playing loud music and interrupting their interview, which I think is super interesting because we just never see him until he comes up at the court case. The first time we see him, like, other than in photos, is when we hear the recording of their fight near the end of the film. Or is it the middle? I don't know. And that's like the first scene we see him like talking and doing something. Before that, all we know, like, we've seen his dead body at the beginning, and then we also see him in photos, and in the opening credits they they show a bunch of photos of him and her when they're dating, and earlier in their relationship. And I think that's a really honestly good choice for what this movie is, because it doesn't, I think if they wanted you to assume her innocence or her guilt in either direction and like have you prefer that way, we would have seen him more, and he would have been a bigger part, whether it was like in flashbacks or something. But I think that was a really smart choice to have him off screen for most of it, for like 90% of it. Hello, how are you? How have you been? I'm just chatting it up about Anatomy of a Fall. I guess that's why we're here. I'm actually talking about what I came here to discuss. But I really love the beginning. I think um it really shows us like what the dynamic of the house is, and it becomes so important later, right? Like any court case, they're going to spend most of their time, with a micro lens looking at everything that happened right around that day, what happened right after he died, right before, a couple days before. And they focus in a ton on this fight that they have that we don't see until later in the film, which I also think is interesting that they didn't start with that. And it makes sense because in the context of the film, she doesn't even bring that up. She has this bruise on her arm, and they're like, "What happened? How did that get there?" And she's like, "Oh, I run into the counter all the time." But it's actually because they had a fight, and he like grabs her arm, and she just like she doesn't want to say that, which makes sense. Like, it makes her seem a little bit more suspicious because she has more cause. Oh my gosh. It's not even 8 o'clock yet. What's my deal? So, I just think this opening scene is such a smart way to start this movie. And, yeah, we never see the husband unless someone's talking about him or we're hearing a recording of him. And that's the case here because we don't see him at all. He's just playing his loud music in this upstairs and, working on the house, basically. I don't have a ton to say about the actual like preparing for the court case other than I think it's crazy that they take the time to test like throwing a body out of the house because they're like how would this fall, and they like film it, and then there's this whole scene where they're talking about they're like testing if Daniel could hear his mom and his dad talking upstairs, and he's like, no, they were talking at a normal volume. And anyway, that whole scene is crazy. And then we get to the trial, which is honestly a huge part of why this movie is super interesting, because the French, the way the French do trials is just bonkers. I I watched this with my friends who have seen, we're all like not court people, courtroom drama people. That we've all seen our fair share of courtroom dramas, and the American courtroom is very structured, and you all have your turn to talk, and it's very like you have to present all your evidence beforehand, and there's no really surprises, and it's just a lot of like, I don't know. But the French are not that way. There's so much of this that I'm just like, I can't believe they said that in a court. They're like, and the prosecutor especially is just so mean. Like, and maybe that he's just written that way to make things more interesting. But he's just so like snippy with her, and like, anyway, like he says stuff like, he brings out, because she's a writer, he brings out one of her books and is like, because she wrote a character saying, if I were to murder somebody, this is what I would do, or something. And he's like, see, she's thought about it. She wrote it in this book and she's thought about it, which is like so bonkers. I don't know. And here, I'll pull up a picture of him. I think I have one. He is so. Just seeing this picture and I'm like, oh yeah, he's so crazy. So this is him. We never see him out of the courtroom, which I also think is interesting. We only see him in the context of like what's happening in the courts. And he just spends so much time like, I think this is the scene where he's talking about her book, because he has it like in his hand and he just like brings it out. It's like, I think it's important that we talk about her book and how this relates to everything. And it's just like, what? That's crazy. And then, yeah. I feel like I had something else to say about him, but I didn't write it down. He's just funny. I had a friend, one of my friends who watched this with me. He was like, "I know a guy who's just like this in real life," and I was like, "That is so unfortunate." It just feels like he's trying to prove something. I mean, I guess you're in a court. That's kind of the point, but he makes all these crazy claims. Like, he brings in her husband's therapist, and the therapist is like, he never told me that he was feeling down on himself to the point where he might end his life. I'm like, so that, and because of that, that means that that never happened. And I'm like, I don't know. um yeah, this whole court case, I think this movie's worth watching just for this whole shenanigans and just seeing how the French do their courts. Also, oh, I was gonna mention this too. I think it's interesting how big language is, like as part of the like what they're talking about in the film. It like comes up during different parts of the movie where they're like, "Oh, you have a court ordered." I don't know what you would call her. She's not a babysitter, but just like an intermediary because the son is a witness. So she kind of stays at the house. And she's like, you have to speak French in my presence because everyone speaks French, but my main character, French, she has a harder time with than English because most of the time when she's speaking to her son, she's speaking to him in English. That feels more comfortable for her. Um, because she is German and from Germany. And what's interesting is this isn't just like a side thing. It comes up in the fight between um the wife and the husband. Let me find a picture of that. Do I have a picture of that? Hold on, let me see. Well, I have a picture of her during that scene. I feel like I should get a picture. Oh, here's the two of them. It's like got some coloring on it or something, but you get the idea. Um, so this is her husband here, and this is like the one of like two scenes that we see him in, and I guess because he was a writer and trying to get back into writing, he was recording lots of stuff, which seems strange to me, but I guess if I don't know. If I had talked about it with my partner ahead of time, I would be fine with it, I guess. Anyway, um they have this fight and he kind of initiates it. He's like, I think, I want to have more time to write, and she, you know, fights back with him, and at a certain point they bring up how she feels like she's been brought onto his turf. She's like, I'm in your country, I'm in your hometown. And he's like, you don't even like speak French as much or whatever. And she's like, oh, he says that her French isn't good. And she's like, well, we speak English at the house because it's a middle ground. No one's at any advantage when we're speaking English because it's both our a second language for us, which I think is really interesting. That not only does that come out as part of the court case because they want her to speak French in the court, and then they also talk about it with the like I don't know why I keep wanting to call her a court ordered babysitter. She's not that. The court ordered like protector lady. Um they I think it's an interesting part of the story, not just in the context of like what's happening in the present, but also within her relationship with her husband right before his death, because this conversation takes place the day before he dies. Um, so anyway, I think it's really interesting that language is such a big part of this film because I like wouldn't even think about that, but I could see that being really scary trying to a go to the French court because that already seems crazy the way they do stuff. B, trying to defend yourself in a language that is not yours, like not native to you. Because it's not like they offer her like a translator, really. They're like, no, you have to speak French while you're here. And then she does end up speaking more English, but initially she's doing the whole trial in French, which I think would be really hard, especially because she's not as comfortable with it as English and German. I don't think she really speaks German ever in the movie, if I remember right, because she is German. But yeah, I don't think she does. Maybe she does, and I just don't remember it, but I don't think she does. Also, this scene is incredible. It's written really well. It's acted really well. This guy, I don't remember his this man. He does a great job of leaving a distinct impression of this man in like one scene. And to be fair, we've been hearing about him throughout the film, but it's just kind of crazy to me that we're able to learn so much about him in just this one scene. And he really does leave an impression in this scene. Like, once you've seen the film, everything basically leads up to this scene, and then a scene I'll talk about later where the son testifies gives like a final testimony before the verdict. Um, but yeah, it's hard to hear, but it's also like just really well done and really well written. And I think a big reason why it won the Oscar, because this scene just like really sticks in your brain and is really well written and feels like a real conversation, but also feels like a real conversation in the way that it would in a movie, if that makes sense. Like some movies you feel like, yeah, that's how real people talk, but I don't really follow what's happening. This is like a good mix, I think. I do want to talk about the son's testimony, but I do want to, I guess I did talk about Messi already. Snoop's performance. But just like this whole scene, so my in-laws were walking upstairs. They were not watching this film with us, and they came upstairs while this was happening, and I was like, you guys came at the worst time. Like, this part is so intense. I had to, I like yelled to them, the dog turned out fine. But just like this whole scene, and like it makes sense that a kid did this. This is very much child logic. Like, if this happened to my dad and I do the same thing to my dog, you know, let's test the results. And he's just trying to figure out in the way that makes sense to him whether his mom is guilty or not. And genuinely, I think it's because of his testimony that she ends up being free. And part of the conversation he has with his court-ordered babysitter, what even would you call her? The intermediary Larry, that he's hanging out with, at the end. She says something like, you kind of just have to decide what you believe, because like, even though the court's job is to find out the truth, it may or may not reach the actual truth. And I think that's part of, like, when, what's her name? The mom meets with the lawyer for the first time. She's like, I'm innocent. And he's like, that doesn't matter. What matters is how you come across as far as the courts go. And, like, that's what really matters here. It doesn't really matter if you're innocent or not. Which I think is really interesting, considering the subject matter. And I think his testimony at the end of the film is just incredible. Just great work on his part. And the writing is really good, too. I had never considered this, but my husband brought this up when we watched it. That I just thought that he was remembering a fond memory of his father and like just decided to bring it up. But I didn't even consider that he might also be telling a lie with this story about his dad. Because basically this story is like, he's talking to his dad in the car, and his dad says, you know, someday Snoop is gonna die and you're gonna have to deal with that, and it's gonna be really hard, but you have to move on. And then at the end, you know, he's detailing this conversation, and then at the end he says, I think my dad meant him, like that he was not gonna be around forever. And so that's kind of how they end the court cases, with him telling this story. But what's interesting is the way it's shot is everything the dad says is perfectly lip synced to how his son is saying it. It's not like the recorded conversation earlier where it's his voice, it's him talking, it's with his cadence. In this case, it's his son talking, and you're seeing him, the dad, like say some stuff, but it's like all the son's voice, and it's lip synced to his voice, which I hadn't noticed until watching it the second time. And my husband was like, I think that's because he is not telling the truth. He's lying. But because he's decided that his mom is innocent in his head, or at least wants to think that, he's telling the story to try and make it look more like his dad um, ended his life instead of her killing him, which I think is really interesting for the ending of the film. Because even at the end, when she comes home, he doesn't seem quite sure if she's like, he seems a little unsure still, even though, um, like she's been, the court, the verdict has been reached and she's been considered innocent. But, yeah, he's not sure what to think of her. He's a little standoffish still when she comes home after the trial. Um, so I think that is super interesting, and I just had never considered that before. Um, I think the last like conversation between, do I have a picture of this? I don't think I do. Hold on. Um, between the lawyer and her, um, this scene, yes. Where they're talking at the restaurant and she's like, I thought that I would get some kind of, I feel like I thought I was going to get some kind of reward. And then they're just like really close to each other. Like she does that with her hands, up against his face, but she also like, they just kind of hug in the restaurant. And I wonder if part of it is she's just so overwhelmed with how underwhelming what has happened, but part of me also wonders if they have some kind of relationship outside of just being a lawyer. But it sounds like they may have dated before the events of the film started, so I don't know. It's very possible that that might be happening. And I think it's an interesting conversation too, where like, yeah, you win your court case, but you just have to go back to your normal life. There's no reward, like, no, like, all right, you did that. You did that successfully. Now you're off. Go do your own thing. And they just kind of leave you to move on with your life by yourself, which seems so hard. I can't even imagine. I just have so much sympathy for her. I know she may have killed her husband, but I don't think she did it. Now that we're at the end, I'm going to say I don't think she did it. I really don't. I think she would be more. I don't think she's as sad as she could be with him being gone, but it sounds like they just kind of had a. I don't know, the relationship didn't sound that romantic to me. It was more intellectual, which I guess would be hard to lose, but she doesn't seem that sad about it. I don't know. And maybe it's just because she's so focused on the court case. But I don't think she did it. I feel like it would be too hard for her to like push him over the balcony, and there's no blood upstairs, which seems weird to me. Like if she were to hit him, which was the theory of the prosecutor, that she hit him on the head and he fell. Like, wouldn't there be some blood upstairs or some kind of weapon? They never find a weapon. There's no blood on the upstairs. Like, he clearly fell, right? Like, and whether he got pushed or whatever, is the whole debate, right? But I don't think she did it. Yeah, I don't think she did. Because I think if she had, she would have planned better. I don't know. Maybe that's like not a good reason, but that's what I think. I think she would have planned it better. Because, like, clearly it makes it look like she didn't. Because she was the only one at home. Her son wasn't there. He doesn't know what happened. So it makes her look really guilty. I don't know. I don't think she did it. And then I think the last shot Every time, the two times I've seen it, it always makes me cry. Let me pull it up. Where she's cuddling with Snoop on the bed and just crying. Because in my head, we've just heard this story where her son. Oh, I didn't mean to make it this big. Hello, I'm way down here now. um, has just said that whether this is a true story or not, her son just said, like, in order to save her, and basically this dog saved her. It was partially her son too, but because the dog had the same reaction to the drugs, she is not going to prison. Um, and also, as part of the story he tells, he says he compares Snoop to her husband. And so I kind of think, like, I think it's interesting. I think this is his room that she goes into at the end. This is like the last shot and then the credits roll. I think this is his room, and I think it's interesting that she goes in there, and it seems like she's just missing him. And maybe this is the first time she's really had to grieve because she's just been, being interviewed. Like the second that, they call the cops, she's being interviewed and immediately having to, like, defend herself. And she's really had not had time to really grieve and think about how much she's missing her husband. And so maybe this is the time where she finally gets to, like, grieve. And also, Missy, I keep calling him his real name, Snoop, was compared to her husband earlier that day. And I like to think of her thinking, oh, it's just like he's here, and she's sad that it's not really him, but the dog is there comforting her and trying to make her feel better, which, I don't know, it makes me cry when I watch it because I feel so bad for her. That would just be really hard. And, like, if it really seems like her son will probably never fully trust her again, which is just, I think, part of what she says to him earlier. She's like, I wish you didn't have to grow up so fast, which is part of, as your kids get older, they come to trust you less and less. And this is just like a more extreme version of that. But, like, I just think it'd be hard if you were her kid to really fully trust her ever, because you would be like, even if you decided that you think that your mom didn't do it, you never really know, because she could totally be lying. She has all, she fully has reason to do that so she doesn't get in trouble and go to prison. But it would just be hard to know. And, maybe the reason he decides that, oh, it's fine, is just, like, out of, like, oh, I live in the same house as her. Of course she wouldn't hurt anybody on purpose. Like, that just, what seems out of the realm of anything I could possibly think of. So, anyway, those are my thoughts on Anatomy of a Fall. I really, really love it. And I think if you haven't seen it, and I already talked about it now, I've pretty much spoiled the whole thing, but it's still worth watching, even then. I really love this movie, and I'm glad I rewatched it. It's a really fun one to see again, because there's just so much you miss the first time because you're not really looking for it. You're like, oh, that's not important. That's, you're just kind of seeing things for the first time. But after having seen it, you know what's important and what's going to come up later. And you can be kind of looking out for, like, oh, yeah, they talk about that later. And so I really liked revisiting this one. I don't really rewatch a lot of movies, I'm realizing. And it's been fun because the reason I started doing this was I have a group of friends and they were like, well, I initiated it, but I was like, let's do like a movie night. In November, we did Noirvember. We did noir movies. We skipped December January we did like cozy comfort movies, which thank goodness we did that because January just sucked. And then, we're doing the cold cases this month. And a lot of the movies I've been picking are ones that I've seen that I think my friends should watch because they're not all like film people. They're, um, they'll watch stuff with me if I invite them to, but, they're not like seeking it out. And so it's been fun watching these movies with them and revisiting movies because I don't rewatch a lot of movies. Like Fargo, I've seen a lot because that's one of my comfort movies. But this one is, I still like it, obviously, but it's not like a movie I would watch over and over again. And next week, I'm excited to see something new and talk about it with you guys. I'm going to be watching Insomnia for the first time this Saturday. And I'm really curious to see what that one's like because it's one of the few Christopher Nolan movies I haven't seen. I think, let me see. I'm looking at his filmography. I haven't seen that one or Following, which is his first film, but I've seen everything else. I don't feel like Insomnia comes up that much for some reason, and I really don't know that much about it other than it takes place in like a cold place. Is it in Alaska? Because I was just like, I need more movies about crimes in the wintertime. The first one we did that I didn't bring up to talk with you guys is Hundreds of Beavers, which is like a little related, but I mostly just wanted to make my friends watch Hundreds of Beavers. I really love that movie. So that was fun to watch with them too. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that. Thank you guys for hanging out with me, and I'm looking forward to doing next week. I don't think I'm gonna have a chance to really stream this week because I have a couple videos I want to release first. I have a few things planned that I just really need to like write the script for and film and finish editing some other things. And so anyway, I'll probably, if I'm caught up by Sunday, I'll do Final Fantasy again. And then I got a code for a fun game that I want to try that I think you guys would be interested in, but I don't know when that's going to happen. Maybe this week if I'm feeling up to it. I just had, anyway, work has been really crazy. And so after this week, it should be less crazy and I'll have more time and more energy to do stuff. So we will see if that's the case, but I'm hoping that's the case. I hope that you all have a wonderful week if I don't see you. And yeah, take care of each other. It's a crazy time we're in right now. Which will be nice. Yeah, and I'll see you all next week for sure. Talking about Insomnia, which I'm excited to talk about. Because I have no idea what we're gonna talk about because I haven't seen it. So we will see. I hope you all have a great night and I'll see you soon. Bye.